The woman who refused to lower her price watched her stall sit empty for 6 months. Then, on a Tuesday morning in monsoon season, a man in a white kurta walked in and bought everything she had. Her name was Priya Sharma, 31 years old, a widow, a mother, a stall in Chandni Chowk Market in Old Delhi, and one rule she had never once broken in 3 years of selling hand-woven cotton saris. Every sari cost 800 rupees, no less, not for anyone, not ever. The other vendors called it stubbornness, some called it stupidity. Old Ramesh, who sold synthetic fabrics 2 stalls down, said it loud enough for her to hear every morning, 800 for cotton? She thinks she is Fab India. He would laugh, his neighbors would laugh. Priya would fold another sari, smooth the edge with her palm, and say nothing. But what no one in that market knew, what no one ever asked, was that 800 rupees was not Priya's profit margin. It was her daughter's school fees, divided exactly across the number of saris she could weave in a month. Not 1 rupee more, not 1 rupee less. The price was not about pride, it was about Anaya. Anaya, who had her father's eyes and her mother's silence, who woke at 5 each morning to study before school, who had told her mother once, in the particular serious voice of a 7-year-old who has thought about something far longer than 7-year-olds should, "Amma, I want to be a doctor." Priya had not slept that night. Instead, she had sat at the loom in the dark and counted. Then she had made the price 800. The market didn't collapse overnight. It shifted, quietly. And then everything changed. A new highway opened 2 kilometers away. A mall followed. Within 3 months, the foot traffic in Chandni Chowk was a fraction of what it had been. Customers who used to come here now bought saris behind glass, in air conditioning, with a loyalty card and free gift wrapping. Old Ramesh was the first to move. He switched to cheap polyester prints at 200 rupees. His stall was always full. Rani, who sold silver bangles, began selling cheap brass painted silver. Suresh, the tailor at the corner, started cutting fabric at half width to stretch his costs. Everyone adjusted, everyone bent. The market became a place of beautiful lies, presented on clean cloth. Priya did not bend. At night, after Anaya was asleep, her fingers moved through cotton threads under one dim yellow bulb while the rest of the house was silent. The real cotton, the double thread borders, the patterns her mother had taught her in a village outside Jaipur, where the looms were old enough to have names. She kept arriving at 5:30 every morning, spreading her cloth across the folding table, and waiting. Most days, no one stopped. On a cold morning in February, gray sky, wind carrying dust and diesel, a woman in an expensive salwar kameez paused at Priya's stall, ran 2 fingers across the fabric and said, 800 for this? The mall has something similar for 400. Priya smiled. Yes, she said, but it is not the same. The woman set the sari down and walked away. What happened next, no one saw. Priya stood very still for a moment. Then she reached beneath the table and opened her daughter's school bag, which sat tucked against the table leg. She checked inside for nothing in particular. She just needed somewhere to look. Then she straightened up and waited again. That evening, after the market closed, she did something she had never done before. She took the price tag off one of the saris. She held a pen over a blank slip of paper. 600, she thought, just this month, just until the fees are paid. She sat with the pen for a long time. Then she put it down. She put the original tag back. She folded the sari and placed it on top of the pile. She did not write anything on the blank slip. She was not sure in that moment if she was brave or simply unable to imagine herself any other way. Either way, the price stayed at 800. The school fees were due in 9 days. She had enough for 4. After that, Anaya stops going to school. She reached into the tin box she kept beneath the loom and counted the notes. Then she counted again. The number did not change. She put the lid back on and made tea. She would not tell Anaya. She would never tell Anaya. Some weights are not for children to carry, even children who have already learned to carry too much. If you have ever held something real in a world that kept choosing cheap, type "I held my line" in the comments, because what happened next is the part no one talks about when they talk about patience. The man arrived 3 weeks into March. Plain white kurta, chappals worn smooth at the heel. He walked through the market the way someone walks when they are looking for something specific and are not entirely sure it still exists. He stopped at Priya's stall. He did not speak immediately. He picked up a sari, the deep indigo one with the fine gold border, and turned it over slowly, the way someone reads a letter they have been waiting a long time to receive. He checked the stitching along the hem. He held the border up to the light. He turned the fabric and checked the reverse side where cheap work always reveals itself. He set it down, picked up another one. Priya watched him and said nothing. He checked the second sari the same way, hem, border, reverse. Then he set it down carefully and looked at her. "How long have you been selling these?" 3 years, she said. "Do you weave them yourself?" "My mother taught me." He nodded slowly. He was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone deciding whether to say the thing they came to say. 800, he said. "Yes." "You've never lowered it?" She looked at him steadily. "No." He held her gaze. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, but confirmation, as if an answer he had been waiting for had just arrived. "I am from a charitable foundation. We work with artisan cooperatives across Rajasthan and UP. We have been building an export partnership with a textile brand in Japan, a brand that sells handmade cloth at full price to customers who want the story behind the fabric." He paused. "I was told about this market by a woman I met on a train 2 years ago, a school teacher from Jaipur. She said there was a woman here who sold real cotton at a real price and never lowered it, not once, not for anyone. She said she had seen it with her own eyes. I have been to 11 markets since then." He looked around at the stalls on either side of her. "Yours is the only one still doing it." Priya felt something move through her, something without a name. She stayed very still. "The teacher," she said slowly. "Was her name Gita?" He looked at her. "Yes. How did you know?" She did not answer immediately. She thought of a morning 4 years earlier, before the mall, before the highway, before her husband died in a road accident outside Noida. A woman had come to her stall, a school teacher she had never met, and explained quietly that one of her students was about to sit her Class 10 board exams. The family had nothing. She had no decent clothes to wear to the exam hall. The teacher had come to the market with what she had saved, which was not enough. Priya had heard the story, looked at the woman's face, and taken a sari from the pile.
She had not charged for it. She had not told her husband that evening when he called. She had not mentioned it to her mother when they spoke that week. She had not written it down anywhere. The act had happened and closed over like water, leaving no trace on the surface. She had forgotten it, almost completely, the way you forget small acts when they feel like the only thing a person with a working conscience could have done, when they feel less like generosity and more like simply being human. "I know her," Priya said quietly. The man from the foundation spent 2 hours at her stall. He called someone on his phone and spoke in low tones. He went through every sari slowly. He asked about volume, timeline, and whether she knew other weavers she trusted. She thought of 11 women. What happened over the next 4 months could be told quickly, but it should not be. Quick telling loses the texture, and the texture is the whole point. The foundation signed a partnership agreement with Priya as lead artisan coordinator. She brought in 11 weavers, women from her mother's village outside Jaipur, women who had been pricing their work below cost for years because no one had offered them otherwise. The Japanese brand placed an initial order for 600 saris. 600! The school fees were paid the month after and the month after that. Old Ramesh watched all of it from 2 stalls down. He watched the foundation representatives arrive in clean vehicles. He watched the paperwork being signed at the folding table. He watched the women gathering in the evenings, their looms producing a sound that had not been heard in that part of the market in years. He said nothing. He folded his polyester prints and looked at the ground. The night the first international payment cleared, Priya sat in the stall long after the market had closed. The lights of Chandni Chowk came on around her, orange, gold, flickering. Anaya was beside her at the folding table, working through her homework by the glow of a phone screen. The little girl looked up without being asked. "Amma, you look different." "Do I?" "Yes," Anaya said. "You look like you knew this was going to happen." Priya looked at her daughter for a long moment. She thought of Gita on a train she had never been on, telling a stranger about a woman in a market who refused to lower her price. She thought of the girl who had worn a sari to her board exams and passed, and gone somewhere into a life Priya would never see. She thought of the blank price tag, the pen she had put down, the tin box counted twice in the dark. "I didn't know," she said finally. "I just kept doing the right thing." If this story is landing somewhere real in you, share it with one person who is holding their line right now. They need to hear this today more than you know. By the following summer, 12 women from the cooperative were weaving. The cooperative had a name, Suraj Tar, Thread of the Sun. Anaya had enrolled in a school with a science laboratory. She was still planning to be a doctor. She said it now the way you say a thing you no longer need to defend. Each of the 12 women had a story that rhymed with Priya's, not identical, but made of the same refusal. Each had held something real against a market that offered less. Each had been laughed at or overlooked or quietly advised to be more practical. What they had in common was not luck. It was the particular kind of stubbornness that from the outside looks like foolishness or pride until the day it becomes something else entirely. Priya did not remind them of this. She did not need to. They already knew. That was what the cooperative was. 12 versions of the same quiet decision, now woven together into something no single thread could have held alone. She still arrived at 5:30. She still spread the cloth across the folding table. The price was still 800 rupees. One morning, old Ramesh walked over. He stood at the edge of her stall without speaking for a long moment, the way a man stands when he has something to say and is not yet sure he deserves to say it. "I heard the cooperative is doing well," he said. "Yes," said Priya. He nodded slowly, then, "I should have kept my prices." It was not quite an apology. It was something quieter, the private acknowledgement of a man who had made a calculation and discovered, too late, that he had calculated the wrong thing. Priya looked at him. "It is not too late to start again," she said. He went back to his stall. Whether he changed, this story does not say, but he thought about it. And sometimes, in a life moving in the wrong direction, the moment of thinking is the beginning of the turn. There is a kind of faithfulness that looks, for a very long time, like nothing more than stubbornness. It holds its price when the market drops. It weaves by a dim yellow bulb when no one is watching. It gives away one sari to a stranger who asks, because it is simply the only human thing to do, and then it forgets about it. It picks up a pen and puts it down. It counts what is in the tin box and makes tea. That faithfulness does not announce itself. It simply continues until the morning something you did in the dark walks back into the light, wearing a white kurta and chappals worn smooth at the heel, asking if you are still there. She was still there. She had forgotten it, but the world hadn't. If you have ever refused to lower your price in business, in relationships, in the way you see yourself, what kept you from giving in? And are you glad you didn't? Leave your answer below. This story was built to find the people who needed it. This is God's Hand Stories, where every story has a hand behind it you didn't see until the very end.